Welcome to Undisputed Fight Talk Boxing Channel. If this is your first time here, you're watching on YouTube, consider hitting that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm always up for discussions in the comments. Do you agree with me? That's fantastic. If not, then let's have a row in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast channels, do consider following and reviewing this channel. It really does help. In this video, I'm going to tackle quite a divisive subject, a subject that doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon, and it's the whole Conor Benn failed doping test scandal that just continues to make boxing headlines. Just recently, the developments have come quite some way, and we've seen a number of interviews with Conor Benn, most notably with Radio Raheem for the Seconds Out Boxing channel, where Conor Benn gets very emotional to the point where he's crying. But are these crocodile tears? Is this a man who's genuinely remorseful for the situation that he's helped find himself in? Or is he just playing career? Is he trying to save his career? Does he know that potentially this could end his boxing career, and he's just trying to try and get people back on side? Let's have a quick recap of the story so far. Unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure 99% of this will be known to you anyway. But let's start back at the start. So Conor Benn fails two doping tests, two VADA doping tests in the build-up to the Chris Eubank Jr. fight. The fight's cancelled. The fight's off, but Conor Benn pleads his innocence. So the shit hits the fan. Conor Benn comes straight out and says he's no cheat. He goes on to say he will prove his innocence. A few months later, Conor Benn provides the WBC and VADA with a 270-page document written up by some of the best lawyers and scientists in the world, saying he claims that the innocence is found within those pages. The WBC go through the document and they return a statement saying they believe Conor Benn may have failed these doping tests due to an unusually high consumption of eggs. Conor Benn then refuses to accept that. He says he believes that the issue's in the lab. WBC don't accept that. There is a bit of a loggerheads there. But for what it's worth, Conor Benn is reinstated into the WBC rankings. But all's not well. That's not the end of the story. Conor Benn is in nowhere in the clear. Meanwhile, back in the UK, back in Britain, the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD, the doping agency over here, want a chat with Conor. They're opening their own investigation because at the time of this doping violation, Conor Benn is a British Boxing Board of Control licensed fighter. Conor's reaction to this is he decides not to renew his license with the board. His position is, if he doesn't hold a license with the board, he doesn't need to take part in this investigation. He also insists he doesn't need to fight in the UK. He believes he can fight in the Middle East. He can fight over in the US. He doesn't need a license. He can still make a very profitable living fighting overseas. He even goes as far as giving those fans that dare question his innocence. Now, bearing in mind he has failed two doping tests, who wouldn't question his innocence? He gave those fans the middle finger, literally on social media. So like I say, Conor Benn believes he can fight overseas. He doesn't need to fight in the UK. And reports start emerging that he's in talks to try and make that ill-fated fight with Eubank Jr. He's going to make that fight in the Middle East. Rumours start coming out that the fight is set for June in the Middle East, and then it goes quiet. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Chris Eubank Jr. confirms he's activated his rematch clause with Liam Smith, who knocked him out earlier this year. On the back of that, UKAD issued a statement saying they'd provisionally suspended Conor Benn and charged him with a doping violation on the 3rd of April. Is that a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that Chris Eubank Jr. decides to rematch Liam Smith, which for me isn't as financially rewarding as a Conor Benn fight? after he's already been in talks with Conor Benn to make this fight. So why did Chris Eubank Jr. leave them negotiations? And here's why. UKAD released this statement. Whilst provisionally suspended, Mr. Benn is prohibited from participating in any capacity or assisting another athlete in any capacity in a competition, event, or activity that is organised, convened, authorised, or recognised by the British Boxing Board of Control or any other World Anti-Doping Code compliant sport, which is quite a big statement. But Conor Benn is still adamant that he can fight abroad. Even after that statement which says he's prohibited, he's adamant he can fight abroad, which is possible. Technically, he's probably right. I don't know for sure, but if he chose the right opponent in the right country, I'm sure he could wriggle out of this suspension. But he will be very limited to who he could fight and where he could fight. But it's this statement for me, for Robert Smith, which all but killed those negotiations with Chris Eubank Jr. Robert Smith said the board would object to Conor Benn fighting outside the UK, and it will reject permission requests from licence holders to fight Conor Benn. Chris Eubank Jr. is a British Boxing Board of Control licence holder. So he didn't turn away from a more financially lucrative fight just because he wanted to gain vengeance on the knockout loss to Liam Smith. I'm sure he does want to gain vengeance, but ultimately he couldn't have taken that fight without risking his licence. That statement from Robert Smith says no British Boxing Board of Control licence holder can fight Conor Benn. That is why that fight fell through. Furthermore, the nail in the coffin for Conor Benn's plans was this other statement by, again, Robert Smith of the British Boxing Board of Control. If any British licence holder, boxer, trainer wants to fight in a tournament abroad with another commission, they have to apply to us for permission. Once we get an application from a British licence holder to take part in an event abroad, we will be able to say yes or no. So, I mentioned earlier how the board would reject any fighters, any British Boxing Board of Controlled fighters from fighting Conor Benn, no matter where it is in the world. You can see from that statement that the implications are much harder hitting them, much further than just fighters. If you're a trainer of a fighter, if you're a promoter of a fighter, if you're licensed by the British board in any capacity and you have anything to do with a fight involving Conor Benn who's suspended, then you have to go to the board to ask for that permission. You're not going to get it. Furthermore, if you decide to go ahead anyway, you're potentially putting your British Boxing Board of Control licence on the line. You could lose it. Do you think Tony Sims, Conor Benn's trainer, is going to put his licence on the line for Conor Benn? Do you think Eddie Hearn, one of the biggest promoters in the world, got a massive stable of fighters in the UK, British-based promoter, is going to put his British Boxing Board of Control licence on the line for Conor Benn? Do you think they do that? Because I don't. So I don't for 1 second believe that these tears from Conor Benn are any form of remorse, any sign that he wants to make his wrongs right. I'm not in a position to say whether he's intentionally cheated or anything like that. That is not what I'm saying in this video. What I can say though, his whole behaviour, particularly towards boxing fans, towards the British Boxing Board of Control and to UK anti-doping, has been nothing short of disgusting since he failed those tests. I don't believe these tears. I believe if he could have, as planned, continued his career overseas, he would have. He wouldn't be crying on interviews. He'd still be giving us the middle finger. I think these statements from the board and from UKAD have basically been a massive shock to the system of not only Conor Benn but those around him. And that's why he's coming out, because he knows his hands are tied now. He has to face this investigation. He doesn't want to. He isn't doing it because it's the right thing to do. If he did, he would have done that from the get-go. One positive that's come from all of this, one positive is Conor Benn is now in talks with UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control. I hope he can get this sorted out. I think he does. He will serve a suspension due to strict liability rules within UKAD. They don't care how a substance got into your system, whether it was accidental, incidental, intentional. They don't care. If it's in there, then you will face some sort of ban unless Conor Benn can prove there was contamination of his urine after it basically had left his hands. And I think that's a very, very tricky thing to do, especially when you've got 2 failed drug tests. What's the odds of 2 urine samples becoming contaminated? If there was a problem in the lab, surely there would be other fighters, other athletes who use that lab who are having similar issues, but it's just Conor Benn that I can see has fell victim to what he claimed at one time was contamination. Let me know in the comments, do you agree? Or do you think Conor Benn is remorseful? Like I said at the beginning, if you've enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. If you're listening on podcast form, thanks for listening and consider giving us a review, and I'll see you next time.